Her granddaughter handed her the wrong pills and a folder already signed in Evelyn's name. They thought the quiet widow would sleep through the theft. Cam smiled. Jordan poured tea, but behind Evelyn's reading glasses was a camera, and behind the antique clock a recorder. By the time they realized she hadn't swallowed a single lie, her lawyer had everything. She'd raised pharmacists, not thieves, and she still knew how to read a label. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The bottle clicked gently against the kitchen counter, light, almost hollow. Jordan placed it down with the kind of smile she used when waiting for compliments. "Your meds came early," she said brightly, like it was good news. Her voice carried the breezy tone of a helpful granddaughter, the kind that posted about family caregiving and expected emojis in return. Evelyn didn't look up right away. Instead, she wiped her hands on the towel looped at her hip and glanced out the window above the sink. A squirrel darted across the fence line. The neighbor's wind chime clinked once. She turned slowly. The bottle was orange, standard, white child-proof cap. The label bore her name, Evelyn A. Marks, but the font was slightly different than usual, smaller, compressed, a line too short for the label. Someone had copied and pasted, not printed from a legitimate system. She picked it up, tapped the bottom. The sound was wrong. Too many capsules, too light. "Thought I'd save you the trouble," Jordan said. "Pharmacy was on my way." Evelyn uncapped the bottle and tilted it, letting one pill fall into her palm. It was pale green, oval, scored, not her usual round tablets. Those were white, always had been, with a subtle crosshatch on the side. She blinked once. "Everything okay?" Jordan asked, her head tilted like a well-trained receptionist. Evelyn smiled faintly. "Just checking the imprint." She flipped the pill between her fingers. It read ZLP-40. Not hers. Her blood pressure meds were BN-20. Always had been. Always would be. She knew every med in the cabinet by sight, texture, even taste. This one was a sedative. She'd filled enough of them to know. She replaced the capsule, sealed the bottle, and slipped it quietly into her cardigan pocket. "Thank you," she said calmly. "I'll sort them into my organizer later." Jordan hesitated a second too long. "Of course. Just want to make sure you're staying regular with everything. Routine's important." Evelyn said, "and kindness." From the hallway, a second voice floated in, slightly too casual, rehearsed. "Cam, you need help reading the label?" he asked, his head poking just far enough around the doorframe to be annoying. Evelyn didn't even blink. "Not yet." Cam grinned, then ducked back out. His footsteps retreated, slow, as if waiting to hear more. Evelyn dried her hands again, folded the towel with precision. She opened the pantry, pulled out a single tea bag, and placed it in a cup already waiting. Her movements deliberate. Later that night, the house was dim. Cam's sports recap murmured from the living room. Jordan's laughter too high and too often for whatever meme she was pretending to enjoy. Evelyn sat in her bedroom, door locked, blinds closed. Her pill organizer sat untouched. Her reading glasses gleamed under the lamplight, and beside them her old pharmacist reference guide, bookmarked with post-its. She picked up the phone and dialed the only number she still had memorized. It rang twice. "Maureen," she said when the line picked up. "She brought me someone else's drug." Silence. Then Maureen's voice, steel wrapped in silk. "Did you take it?" Evelyn smiled. "I'm old, not stupid. Do you know what it is? Zolpidem, 40 milligrams, enough to knock me flat on my back if I hadn't checked." Maureen exhaled sharply. "That's not just a mistake. I know. Does she know you know?" "No, and I don't plan to let her yet." Outside the bedroom, a cabinet door clicked open, the sound of a drawer being slid shut. Evelyn didn't move. Her hand went to the cardigan draped over the chair, fingers closing around the bottle still tucked in the pocket. She pressed the phone closer to her ear. "Maureen," she said softly, "this house doesn't belong to them, but they think it does." On the other end, Maureen's voice dropped low. "Then let's remind them who's still running the pharmacy." The next morning, Evelyn poured herself a cup of black coffee. No cream, no sugar. Her hands moved with the same steadiness that had once earned her a reputation behind the pharmacy counter. Precise, unshakable, impossible to rush. She waited until Jordan and Cam left for their morning walk, which typically included a stop at that overpriced coffee trailer they called a reward for being caregivers. Then she brought the orange bottle out from her cardigan pocket and set it on the kitchen scale. Exact weight, 142 grams, lighter than it should have been. She emptied the capsules into a clean porcelain dish. 27, all identical, all pale green. She cracked one open carefully and dipped a Q-tip into the powder. Then she opened her personal copy of the 2004 Pharmacology Desk Reference, the thick one with the cracked spine, and flipped to the page she already knew by memory. Zolpidem tartrate, 40 milligrams, extended release, not recommended for geriatric patients over 70. Risk of cognitive disorientation, respiratory depression, and fall injury. She slid the bottle into a small satin pouch, zipped it closed, and tucked it beneath the lining of the cedar jewelry box her late husband had carved by hand. Then she sat down with her own prescription bottles, pulled them into a semicircle like old friends, and began comparing dosage, size, labeling, everything. None of her real medications looked remotely like what Jordan had handed her. She opened a notebook. Page 1, 7:42 a.m., bottle examined, not prescribed to me. Label appears falsified. Check pharmacy logs. She capped her pen. Then a knock. Evelyn opened the front door to find Maureen in her favorite quilted vest, holding a bag of scones like contraband. I brought pastries, Maureen said. Also questions. They sat by the window. Evelyn poured tea. Maureen inspected the kitchen like a battlefield medic, eyes scanning corners, noting drawer positions, reading body language. They think you're sleeping more, she said, unwrapping a raspberry scone. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. That's their mistake. Maureen leaned back. So what now? I log them, Evelyn said. Everything. What time Jordan comes and goes. What she repeats. What she touches. What pills she thinks I've taken. Maureen nodded slowly. The long game. The only one worth playing, Evelyn replied. From the front walk, a car door slammed. Evelyn's spine straightened. Cam. She heard his boots on the porch. The heavy kind that didn't match his tech job, but made him look like a provider. He came through the door with a phone already pressed to his ear. No, she's fine. I just think we need to reevaluate her med compliance. She's been sleeping through appointments, slower cognition. It might be time to talk about a long-term care plan. He paused when he saw Evelyn and Maureen at the table. He didn't flinch, just changed his tone. Oh, I'll call you back. He offered a thin smile. Didn't realize we had company. Just catching up, Evelyn said. About what? He asked too casually. Maureen took a bite of scone, chewed like it was the most important thing in the world. How to keep an old mind sharp. Cam nodded slowly, then walked out of the room, but not before his gaze landed on the kitchen scale. It had been wiped clean. The door to the hallway creaked open, then shut again. Evelyn waited until the footsteps faded, then turned to a fresh page in her notebook and wrote, 9:21 a.m. Cam spoke to unknown party about med compliance, suggested long-term care. Maureen leaned in, whispering, they're moving quicker now. Let them, Evelyn whispered back. They're dosing for a sleepwalker. But I've already woken up. Outside, wind stirred the autumn leaves along the driveway. Cam's voice echoed faintly from the office. Another call, lower this time. Strategic. Evelyn stood slowly, joints stiff but sure. Let's see how well they remember their own lies. It started with a chart. Jordan printed it off the internet, taped it to the inside of the kitchen cabinet like it was gospel. At the top, in bold, bubble font letters, weekly care log, grandmother Evelyn. Monday through Sunday, morning, afternoon, evening. A rainbow of checkboxes waiting to be filled in with fake concern. Jordan clicked a pen as she opened Evelyn's pill organizer. Let me pre-sort everything for you, she said, voice sickeningly sweet. So you don't have to worry. Evelyn sat at the table with her tea, silent. She watched Jordan shake out pills from various bottles, her thumb moving with fake familiarity. Jordan wasn't careful. She placed 2 small white tablets in Monday morning's slot. Not Evelyn's prescriptions. Not even close. You're so organized, Evelyn said softly. Jordan beamed, mistaking the compliment for surrender. Just want to make life easier. That afternoon, Cam entered Evelyn's bedroom without knocking. He flicked the dimmer switch, setting the lights to a low amber. Softer lighting helps with overstimulation, he said. It's better for memory retention. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You work in tech, not memory care. He didn't answer. Just smiled like he'd studied the expression from a YouTube tutorial titled How to Gaslight Gently. When they left to run errands, Evelyn pulled a tiny lens from her sewing kit and clicked it into place inside the middle shelf of her bookcase. The angle was perfect. It captured the pill organizer, the hallway, and the armchair where she pretended to nap every afternoon. The red recording light stayed off, but she knew it worked. Later, Maureen sat cross-legged on Evelyn's bed, thumbing through an old copy of Medical Fraud Prevention for Seniors. "I can bring over actual meds," she offered. "Just enough to fill the tray properly. They'll never notice." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I've got better." She reached under the bed and pulled out a velvet-lined box. Inside, her old compounding kit. Brass scale, custom labels, pill molds, the works. Maureen's eyes widened. "You kept it." Retired, not forgetful. That evening, Evelyn made a show of taking her pills in front of Jordan. She smiled, held the cup to her lips, sipped water, then turned her head and spat the capsule discreetly into the loose lining of her cardigan sleeve. She let one pill fall to the floor as she walked out of the room. Cam found it by the hallway heater, kneeling to inspect it. He didn't say anything, just pocketed it like evidence and told Jordan, "She's dropping doses. We need to log that." Exactly as Evelyn planned. Back in her room, she worked under the desk lamp. She took an old pharmacy bottle identical to the one Jordan had handed her and peeled off the label with slow, deliberate fingers. She printed a new one from her typewriter, manual, no digital trail. The label read, "Marks take one when greedy." She affixed it perfectly, no wrinkles, and slid the revised bottle deep into the drawer lined with her late husband's cufflinks and Masonic ring. She didn't smile, not yet. In the next room, Cam whispered through a call, "She's slipping. Lights confuse her now. Skipped 2 doses this week. I think it's time." Evelyn stood just outside the door, silent in her slippers. She reached into her pocket, turned the tiny camera lens just a few degrees toward the door, and tapped the base of the bookshelf once. The blinking light began. The rain came late that night, soft at first, like a hush against the roof, then heavier, steady, the kind of sound that had once lulled Evelyn to sleep. But not anymore. She sat at her writing desk, a wool throw wrapped around her shoulders, the lamp casting a quiet halo over a stack of blank forms. At the center, the revised will, newly notarized, tucked inside a Ziploc pouch to keep it from wrinkling. She reached for a clean pharmacy bottle, one of her own, from the days when she still ran the back counter at Hawthorne Drugs, back when her name meant something in this town besides dependent. The bottle was identical to the one Jordan had used. Same dimensions, same child-proof cap. She unscrewed the lid and held it to the light. No scratches, no residue. Perfect. She rolled the document tight, rubber-banded the center, and slid it gently inside. It nestled into the orange plastic like it belonged there. Then she sealed the cap, not with just pressure but with a thin ring of duct tape, layered with clear polish. A trick she'd used in college to test tamper-proof seals. Undetectable unless you knew what to feel for. From the typewriter, she pulled the label she'd created earlier and pressed it into place. "Marks, take one when greedy." A grin touched the corner of her mouth, the first real one in weeks. She placed the bottle inside the cedar drawer next to her husband's Masonic ring. Locked it. The next morning, Maureen arrived with 2 bags, one filled with groceries, the other with questions. "Egg salad or revenge first?" she asked, kicking her shoes off at the door. Evelyn handed her tea. "Come upstairs." They sat on the bedroom floor, cross-legged like teenagers sneaking secrets. Evelyn opened the drawer and held up the bottle. Maureen leaned back against the dresser, eyebrows raised. "You're going to let her open it?" Evelyn tapped the cap gently. "Eventually." Maureen reached out, then pulled back, as if it were explosive. "This isn't just petty. This is poetic." "No," Evelyn said, "it's legal." They shared a look. No need to toast. No need to explain. Later that afternoon, Cam paced the back deck, phone pressed tight to his cheek, voice low but sharp-edged. "She's slower now," he said. "Doesn't even notice when the schedule changes. And Jordan says she barely finishes her tea." He paused, listened. "No, I'm telling you, it won't be long. She's weaker every day." Evelyn sat in the sunroom, one book open, another recording quietly beneath the cushion. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just turned the page and sipped her tea all the way to the bottom. Not because she needed it, but because they were counting on her forgetting how to finish anything. Upstairs, the camera in the bookshelf rolled on. In the drawer beside it, the bottle waited. Not medicine, not poison, just proof, waiting for the wrong hands to get greedy. The folder was pastel blue, too soft for its contents. Jordan slid it across the breakfast table, hands folded like she was offering a child's report card and not a legal maneuver. "I thought we'd just simplify things," she said, voice dipped in fake empathy. "Make sure everything's up to date. in case of an emergency. Evelyn didn't touch it. She lifted her teacup, took a long sip, and stared at the folder like it had teeth. "What kind of emergency?" she asked, mildly. Jordan tilted her head. "You know, just standard power of attorney stuff. You had one on file, but it's dusty." "Ah." Evelyn set the cup down. "Dusty documents. Dangerous things." Jordan laughed like that was a joke. It wasn't. Evelyn opened the folder. A crisp stack of legalese greeted her, dense with subclauses and signature lines. Her name dotted the document, Evelyn A. Marks, but not in her own hand. Already pre-filled, already pre-targeted. She flipped to the second page. Durable power of attorney for finances and medical decisions. Grantor, Evelyn A. Marks. Agent Jordan L. Marks. Revokes all prior authorizations unless otherwise specified. Her thumb hovered above the line. "Is Cam listed on this?" Evelyn asked, light as fog. "No," Jordan said too quickly. "I mean, he helped me format it, but it's just me. Simpler that way." "Of course." Evelyn closed the folder. "Would you be a dear and put the kettle back on? I think I'll need another cup before I do any official scribbling." Jordan smiled. "Sure thing, Grandma." As soon as she left the room, Evelyn opened the folder again, this time with purpose. She reached for her iPad, not the new one, but the old model she kept tucked inside a photo album labeled tax stuff. She unlocked it, angled the camera, and took 2 fast, quiet shots of the document, one of the title page, one of the signature line. Then she opened her email draft to Mr. 11. Subject: Need confirmation, urgent. Body: Is this form valid, and is she allowed to file it on my behalf without verbal confirmation? She attached the images, hit send, and set the iPad face down on her lap just as Jordan returned, 2 mugs in hand. "Hope you don't mind chamomile," Jordan said, setting the cup down with a little too much emphasis. "Good for nerves." Evelyn smiled politely. "Lovely." Jordan slid the pen across the table. Evelyn took it in her hand, turning it slowly between her fingers like a violinist testing a bow. Her hand hovered over the signature line, paused. "Is this where I sign?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. Jordan nodded. "Just there. I can notarize it at the UPS store later." Evelyn bent forward, then let the pen slip between her fingers and roll off the table, clattering to the hardwood below. "Oh, Butterfingers," she murmured. Jordan moved to retrieve it, but Evelyn waved her off. "It's all right. I'll get it later. Let me finish my tea first." She didn't pick the pen up, she didn't touch the folder again, and she didn't blink when her phone buzzed quietly in her lap, a response from Mr. Levin. Subject: Absolutely not. Do not sign. This is not standard language. Body: This document would give your granddaughter full access to all assets immediately and irrevocably. Happy to review it formally if needed. Evelyn sipped her tea. Jordan cleared her throat. "You sure you don't want to sign now? Just easier while you're sharp." Evelyn looked at her, really looked at her. Soft curls framing a face trained to look helpful. Lip gloss, neutral sweater. A costume made for sympathy. And yet Evelyn saw it now. The flicker of urgency just behind the eyes. The kind of eagerness that couldn't be faked. She leaned forward, voice soft. "You know, I've learned something about sharp things." Jordan blinked. "What's that?" "They don't always look like knives." Jordan smiled nervously. "So should we finish this later?" Evelyn looked down at the untouched pen. "We'll see," she said. That night, in the quiet of her room, Evelyn printed Levin's email and folded it neatly into her notebook. Next to it she wrote, "Attempted override, documented. They think I forgot how to read. Now I'll remind them how I remember." She didn't tear the folder, didn't confront. She was playing the long game, and now she had proof. Major twist, Num 1, unlocked. Jordan wasn't just hovering, she was plotting. Evelyn wasn't just watching, she was documenting. And the next move would be hers. The antique clock had belonged to Evelyn's mother, all brass curves and a low melodic tick that never quite kept perfect time. It had sat on the shelf for decades, ignored like a forgotten heirloom no one dared move, which made it the perfect hiding place. That morning, Evelyn cracked it open with a tiny screwdriver, slipped a slim voice recorder behind the faceplate, and tested the mic with a whisper. Greed never whispers as quietly as it thinks it does. She closed it back up, aligned the hands at 6:30, the 1 hour nobody in the house paid attention to, and walked out like nothing had changed. That evening, just before dinner, the recorder caught what she'd been waiting for. Cam's voice, low and deliberate, cutting through the tick-tick of the clock's broken rhythm. If she slips up again, we go straight to the bank. Start the transfer paperwork. We'll say she wasn't coherent when she revoked us. Jordan's reply came with a sigh too long to be innocent. She's been better about pretending lately, drinking more tea, sitting still. But that doesn't mean she's not a risk. Cam again. Then we wait for a slip. One good fall, one missed dose, and she's in memory care by summer. Laughter. Brief, ugly. The audio ran 3 minutes, 41 seconds. Evelyn clipped the file, labeled it plainly, Bank Plan, 7:16 p.m., Dining Room, and attached it to an encrypted email to Mr. Levin. Subject: Documentation, Next Step. She hit send. The reply came 2 hours later. Subject: Received. Good work. Let them keep talking. Body: Stay safe, and keep the originals. By then, Jordan had already moved on to a new tactic. Evelyn noticed it the next morning, when she tried calling the podiatrist and got a disconnected tone. She checked her voicemail inbox, empty. Even the robocalls were gone. She unlocked the cloud backup folder on her old phone, the one Jordan assumed didn't work anymore, and found every message neatly preserved, time-stamped, unedited. The deletion log showed new activity. User, JL Marks, deleted 14 voicemails. Time, 6:08 a.m. Bold, Evelyn murmured. She copied the backup folder to an external drive the size of a lipstick tube and slid it into the hemline of her old raincoat. It had rained the morning her husband proposed. That evening, as she watered the hydrangeas, she passed the open window to Cam's office. The blinds were half closed, the laptop screen angled toward the couch. Redfin, Zillow, local property listings. One was titled, Updated Bungalow on a Quiet Block, Walkable to Parks, Schools and Downtown. List price, $765,000. Status, pending. Her house. He was already browsing like it belonged to him. Later, Maureen arrived with soup and suspicion. They sat in the garage, doors cracked for air, like co-conspirators in a thriller no one else knew they were in. You got the audio? Maureen asked, stirring her thermos. Sent it to Levin already. Voicemails? Backed up. Jordan's digital fingerprints are all over the deletions. Maureen gave a low whistle. They're digging their own hole. They just don't know how deep yet. They sipped in silence for a moment before Maureen asked, What happens when they figure out you're watching? Evelyn didn't blink. By then, I'll be holding the shovel. That night, Cam passed her in the hallway, his phone tucked to his ear, whispering numbers. She smiled. The recorder ticked on. It was a Tuesday when the bottle turned up. Jordan found it wedged between her makeup pouch and sunglasses case at the bottom of her oversized tote. She'd been looking for lip balm, something to smooth the edges of her voice before her check-in call with Evelyn's doctor, when her fingers closed around the familiar orange plastic. Her brow furrowed. She hadn't packed this. She turned it over. It was clearly a pharmacy bottle. Same child-proof cap, same translucent amber hue, but this one had a label she didn't recognize. Marks take one when greedy. She let out a dry laugh. Cute. She tossed it onto the kitchen table beside a pile of unopened mail and half a banana. Okay, Grandma, let's just start leaving riddles in our prescriptions. Cam came in from the back door, sweaty from his midday jog, earbuds still dangling. What's that? Another joke, Jordan muttered. I found it in my bag, probably planted it to make some kind of point. Cam picked it up, frowning. He twisted off the cap and tilted the bottle toward the light. No pills, just a tight scroll of cream-colored paper, rubber-banded in the middle. He fished it out, careful not to tear it, and unrolled it across the table. The header was unmistakable. Addendum to Last Will and Testament. R.E.D. Revocation of Beneficiary. Jordan L. Marks. His eyes moved across the page faster now. Lines highlighted. Language cold and surgical. Effective immediately. The named beneficiary, Jordan L. Marks, shall be removed from all fiduciary and property inheritance designations previously listed under Nevada and Washington state jurisdiction. Cam looked up, throat dry. This can't be real. Jordan snatched the paper, scanning it with a rising pitch in her breath. She wouldn't. This is a prank. It has to be. She's just trying to scare us. Cam's jaw clenched. Where did this even come from? Jordan hesitated. It was in my bag, but I didn't think she'd notice a switch. Cam asked quietly, and then, behind them, a chair scraped softly against the floorboards. Evelyn stood in the doorway. Her cardigan was buttoned neatly. her hair pinned. She looked like a librarian mid-shift, not someone under siege. "You opened the wrong bottle," she said, voice calm as glass. Neither of them moved. She stepped into the room, walked over to the sink, and turned on the tap. The sound of water rushing filled the stunned silence behind her. Jordan found her voice. "You planted that." "No," Evelyn said, rinsing a teacup. "I labeled it." Cam stepped forward. "You can't just—" "I didn't," Evelyn interrupted, drying her hands. "My lawyer did. After notarizing it. After filing the revision with the county clerk's office. That's just a souvenir copy for your records." Jordan gripped the counter behind her like it might steady the vertigo. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Evelyn asked, reaching for the dish towel. "Well then, you'd better find out soon. You've been planning to sell a house you don't own." Cam's lips parted, but no words came. "And by the way," Evelyn added, "you may want to call your bank. That pre-approval you're banking on? Let's just say a few emails went out yesterday, with attachments." The air crackled. Evelyn walked to the doorway, paused. "Next time," she said over her shoulder, "read the label." And then she was gone. Quiet steps retreating down the hall like a woman who hadn't just detonated the room. Cam turned to Jordan, stunned. "What the hell do we do now?" Jordan didn't answer. She was still staring at the label. "Marks take one when greedy." Her hands trembled, but not with age. The knock came at exactly 10 a.m. Not rushed, not hesitant. 3 measured raps against the wood, followed by silence. Evelyn was already in her chair, cardigan folded neatly over her lap. The kitchen window cracked just wide enough to let in the rain hum of Tacoma's spring drizzle. She didn't rise. She didn't need to. Jordan opened the door with the performative smile of someone expecting a flower delivery. Instead, she found Mr. Levin. Dark overcoat, burgundy tie, a briefcase in one hand, a notary public in tow, a woman in her 50s with no makeup and less patience. She carried a clipboard and an embossed seal stamp clipped to her blazer. Jordan stepped back instinctively. "Mr. Levin," she said, voice lifting at the end like a question she didn't want answered. He didn't smile. "Miss Marks." Cam appeared behind her, barefoot, wearing a hoodie and the nervous energy of someone who just closed too many browser tabs. "Is this necessary?" Mr. Levin stepped inside. "Yes." The notary followed. She didn't speak. At the table, Evelyn gestured toward the seat opposite hers. "Good morning, Charles." He gave her a respectful nod and set down the briefcase with a quiet click. Jordan hovered near the sink, trying to look casual. "What's this about?" Levin opened the latches. "Asset protection. Document enforcement. Witnessing a public reading." Cam raised both hands, defensive. "We didn't do anything illegal." Levin didn't look up. "That's for the recording to clarify." Cam blinked. "Recording?" Evelyn turned her gaze toward the antique clock on the shelf. "Tick, tick, tick. 7 minutes, 39 seconds, she said, "including the part where you suggested I'd be better off in memory care." Jordan stiffened. Levin removed a slim folder and laid it flat on the table. "Updated will. Filed and time-stamped through Pierce County. Includes notarized amendments and full revocation of all prior documents." He opened it to the signature page. The notary leaned in, flipped through her copy and began inspecting the seals. Evelyn took a sip of her tea. Cam's voice cracked. "You're framing us." Mr. Levin finally looked up. "You brought her unprescribed sedatives. You attempted to falsify a durable power of attorney. You deleted medical voicemails. I have screenshots, audio files, and time-stamped backups." Jordan turned pale. "You can't do this." Evelyn tilted her head. "You brought me fake pills. I brought real proof." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was damning. Jordan's eyes darted from the will to the briefcase to Evelyn, then finally to Cam, who had nothing left to offer except a shrug full of failure. "I'm done," she muttered, grabbing her bag. "I didn't even want this." Evelyn raised her teacup. "That makes 2 of us." Jordan slammed the door hard enough to rattle the hallway mirror. Cam stood for a moment longer, his jaw moving like he had something smart to say. He didn't. He followed. Mr. Levin didn't flinch. The notary sealed the final stamp and slid her copy back into its folder. "And now?" Evelyn asked. He handed her a crisp printout, the new division summary. 100% of her estate, liquid and fixed, to be split as follows: Maureen Elizabeth Parks, 40%, the Evelyn Marks Scholarship for Ethical Pharmaceutical Education, 30%, Tacoma Senior Legal Defense Fund, 30%, no contest clause, she asked. "Bulletproof," Levin replied. "If they challenge, they lose everything." Evelyn folded the summary, placed it in her ledger, and refilled her tea. The steam curled upward, soft and slow. Mr. Levin gathered his things. The notary didn't say goodbye. At the doorway he paused. "You've done more than most ever do, Evelyn. You didn't just outlive them, you outplayed them." Evelyn smiled. "No," she said quietly, "I outwaited them." He left. And in the stillness that followed, she opened the drawer beside her, the one with her husband's Masonic ring and a memory box lined in velvet. The bottle sat upright, untouched. She tapped it once, then shut the drawer. The house was hers again. But the next move was already in motion. The Pierce County Courthouse smelled like dust and fluorescent lighting, antiseptic, overwaxed, and impersonally quiet. Evelyn stepped through the security gate with her chin high and her handbag snug against her elbow. She wore her navy wool coat, the one with the silver buttons, and the stitched-in initials her husband had gifted her for their 30th anniversary. It still fit perfectly. Beside her, Maureen kept pace, a file folder under one arm and a Tupperware of pecan pie in the other. "Why do courthouses always feel like you're either about to get married or arrested?" she whispered. Evelyn smiled without looking away from the sign that read, "Clerk's Office, Estate and Probate Filings." "They're about to find out I'm doing neither." Inside, the clerk barely looked up as she gestured for Evelyn to slide the file across the counter. "Name of the decedent, not yet applicable," Evelyn replied, dry as bone. The clerk blinked, then took the folder. She flipped through the notarized amendments, saw the county seal, saw Mr. Levin's signature, saw the revocation clause. Her eyebrows rose. "This one's airtight," she murmured. Evelyn nodded. "That's the point." Maureen nudged her. "Ask for a receipt." Evelyn did. The timestamp hit 10:43 a.m. At 11:12 a.m., the clerk's office uploaded the public version into the official records database. 10 pages of legal consequence, all now permanent. By 11:15, Jordan Marks's name was no longer listed as successor trustee or as a beneficiary of any kind. By 11:16, Mr. Levin's office emailed a cease and desist order to Jordan's last known address, with a subject line that read, "Termination of legal access. Effective immediately." At 12:05, Evelyn and Maureen sat in the corner booth at Ledoux's Pie Kitchen, 2 slices of warm pecan in front of them, and not a single regret between them. Maureen tapped her fork against her plate. "Think she's opened her mail yet?" "I hope so," Evelyn said. "Certified delivery makes for a very punctual reality check." They toasted with pie forks and finished every crumb. That evening the house was quiet except for the rhythmic sound of the washing machine downstairs. Evelyn stood at her writing desk, sunlight bleeding through the blinds in long gold stripes. She opened the velvet-lined memory box and gently lifted the bottle. "Marks, take one when greedy." She placed it on a black cloth backdrop and used her old Canon to snap a single photograph. No filters, no edits, just truth, in amber and white. She uploaded it to a community page called Gray Matter, Seniors Who Know Better, and typed a caption, "Trust is earned, not inherited." She hit post. By midnight, it had over 3,000 shares. Comments began rolling in. "My daughter tried to change my will. Guess it's time to get a camera too. This is brilliant. Empowered aging at its finest. I want to be her when I grow up." Evelyn didn't reply to any of them. She simply turned off the screen and poured herself a cup of mint tea. By morning, 3 national senior advocacy blogs had picked up the story. One even called it the Grandma Clause. Evelyn didn't care for that title, but she understood the power of a good headline. Late that afternoon, as the sky dimmed to a bruised lilac, the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Evelyn opened the door slowly, arms crossed, back straight. There, on the porch, stood Jordan. Hair brushed, face neutral, a too careful calm in her eyes. She held the bottle in both hands. "I just came to return this," she said softly. Evelyn looked at it, then at her. "You already opened it," she said. "I know," Jordan replied, "but I didn't understand." "You understood perfectly," Evelyn said. There was silence, the kind that prickles. Jordan shifted, as if waiting to be invited in. Evelyn didn't move. "You said trust is earned," Jordan whispered. "I'm trying." Evelyn looked at her, not angry, not soft, just still. "I have no pills to offer," she said, "only memory," and with that she gently closed the door. No slam, no lock, just finality. From the front window, she watched Jordan stand there a moment longer, then turn and walk away. This time, with both hands empty. Jordan thought returning the bottle might reopen the door. But Evelyn knew, some things once broken stay that way. and the final dosage hadn't been administered, not yet. It was the second time in as many days that Jordan stood on Evelyn's porch, but this time she knocked softly. Once, then twice more. No bag, no bottle, just the tentative presence of someone who wasn't sure if they'd be received as guest or ghost. Evelyn answered, calm as before. No cardigan today, just her long gray sweater and slacks pressed to a clean line. She didn't step aside. I thought I said everything yesterday, Evelyn said. Jordan didn't flinch. You did. I didn't get to. There was a pause, the length of a breath Evelyn could have held longer than Jordan's entire resolve. 5 minutes, Evelyn said, turning back inside. Jordan stepped in, quietly closing the door behind her like the sound might change the outcome. The kitchen smelled faintly of mint and lemon oil. The bottle was no longer on display, but Jordan noticed its absence like an itch under her skin. I didn't know what Cam was planning, she said before Evelyn even sat. I swear, the pills, the paperwork, that wasn't all me. Evelyn looked up, eyes unreadable. No, Jordan shook her head. I thought he was trying to help. I didn't. You picked up the prescription, Evelyn said evenly. You put the bottle in my hand. Jordan blinked. I just didn't want you to fall behind on your meds. I wasn't trying to sedate me, Evelyn offered. Silence. Jordan folded her arms. Look, I've made mistakes, but I'm here. I'm trying. I want to earn back your trust. Evelyn stood and walked to the counter, where a fresh kettle steamed quietly on its base. She poured 2 cups, slid one toward the seat opposite her. Jordan didn't move at first, then sat, fingers laced tight around the ceramic, as if warmth could replace permission. Evelyn took her time with the first sip. Then, almost absently, she said, You already opened what you needed to. Jordan stared at her. I just mean, if there's anything I can do to fix this, to undo what we did. You mean undo your own intentions? Jordan bit her lower lip. I'm not that person anymore. A soft creak echoed from down the hallway. A second set of footsteps. Mr. Levin entered the room, a leather folder under his arm. He said nothing, just nodded once at Evelyn, then turned his gaze toward Jordan. She paled. You're here? She asked. I've been here, he replied. Jordan looked from Evelyn to Levin, and back again, all the bravado draining out of her shoulders like a balloon losing air. There's nothing to fix, Evelyn said. The will has been filed, the protections are enforced, and the camera in the hallway has everything it needs. Jordan sat still for a long moment, then said, so quietly it nearly vanished, so that's it. No, Evelyn's voice was suddenly sharp, not loud, just sharpened like a needle. That's justice. Jordan blinked, eyes glinting, no tears, just the glossy sheen of finality. Evelyn leaned in, fingers resting lightly on the rim of her cup. You handed me poison. Jordan closed her eyes. Evelyn didn't stop, and I gave you a warning. There was no explosion, no screaming, just the soft clink of Evelyn setting down her cup and standing. Jordan stood too, slow and brittle. Levin stepped aside, not saying a word, letting her pass. At the door, Jordan turned back. If I walk out now, you already did, Evelyn said, the minute you wrote me off as weak. She opened the door, let in the pale light and the far-off sound of crows overhead. Jordan stepped through, her shadow shrinking behind her. Evelyn didn't watch her leave. She walked back to the table, sat across from Levin, and opened the leather folder. Inside, blank signature lines waited for the next chapter. Let's begin, she said. And from the hallway the antique clock ticked again. Not quite on time, but right where she wanted it. The key turned with a reluctant click. Evelyn knelt beside the cedar armoire, her fingers steady as she peeled back the braided rug and lifted the wooden floorboard beneath it. She'd had the safe installed in 1983, back when her husband insisted on quiet exits from the bank and tangible locks over digital ones. It had never failed her. Inside, rows of organized folders labeled in her own careful script: house, final, bonds, burial, trust, 2025, and now one blank manila folder waiting to be filled. She reached in, retrieved her asset distribution binder, and opened it across her lap. The pages were crisp, margins neat, ink always blue, a habit she never broke from pharmacy school. She slipped a new document inside. Addendum, posthumous medical endowment, Tacoma Senior Legal Rights Fund, $85,000, earmarked for tech upgrades, transportation grants, and case support for elder abuse victims. A precise counterweight to what Jordan and Cam had tried to orchestrate. She initialed every page, dated the envelope, sealed it with tape and signature. From the hallway, soft footsteps. Maureen leaned in the doorway, holding 2 mugs. Green tea this time. No commentary. Evelyn smiled faintly and took one. She nodded toward the open safe. It's strange. There's a kind of peace in putting things where no one else can reach. Maureen glanced at the files. They thought you were tired. I was, Evelyn said, locking the safe again. But I wasn't done. They sat on the edge of the bed, knees not quite touching, steam curling from the mugs. Do you think she'll try again? Maureen asked. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She reached into her nightstand and withdrew her phone. A new message glowed across the screen. The contact read simply, Jordan. The message, you'll regret this. Maureen leaned over, charming. Evelyn's fingers didn't twitch. Desperate. She tapped the screen, forwarded the message to Mr. Lavin, and deleted the thread. Then she placed the phone face down. At that exact moment, Mr. Lavin sat 3 blocks away inside the courthouse annex, filing a second cease and desist. This one backed with the new will, the bank audio, and the property surveillance timestamps. The clerk barely looked up. They already knew Evelyn's case by name. By mid-afternoon, the community whisper network was already churning. Someone had seen Jordan crying in her car near the old fire station. Someone else swore Cam had listed a temp job on Craigslist. Rumors circled fraud, pills, elder abuse, but Evelyn said nothing. She declined a phone interview, ignored a podcast request. When the regional news station emailed for a comment, she replied with 3 words, the facts remain. At dusk, Evelyn stood on the porch, her tea cooling against her palm. The bottle, the one marked "Take One When Greedy," sat sealed in her writing desk, untouched. She wouldn't destroy it. Not yet. Some warnings were meant to remain visible. From down the street, a car idled too long, then drove off. Behind her, the house was silent, not with fear or tension, just clarity. Maureen joined her, wrapping a shawl tighter around her shoulders. If they come back, they won't, Evelyn said. And if they do? Evelyn turned, her eyes flint-hard but calm. Then they'll find me where they left me, but stronger. Inside the safe, the new endowment form settled into its place, next to a revised emergency plan and a single photo of Evelyn and her husband on their front steps, back when no one thought of legacy or leverage. The wind stirred. Somewhere, a door clicked shut, and the bottle waited, not as bait, as memory, measured and sealed. Jordan didn't recognize the envelope at first. No return address, no handwriting, just her name printed neatly in block capitals across the front, like a subpoena that hadn't yet chosen its tone. She opened it on the kitchen counter, hands stiff, eyes already scanning for the blow before it landed. Inside, a single typed letter, and beneath it, a page she hadn't seen in weeks, though she should have. Pharmacy pickup receipt. Date, 2 months ago. Prescribing physician, N.A. Pickup name, Jordan L. Marks. Medication, Zolpidem tartrate, 40 mg 30 sec T. Prescription issued for Evelyn A. Marks. A small black and white printout was stapled to the corner, low resolution, time-stamped security footage from a drive-through window. It was unmistakable. Jordan, in sunglasses, smiling, handing over her ID, accepting a bottle, signing on a digital pad. No hesitation. She flipped back to the letter. The text was short, less than 50 words. Jordan, you picked up medication not prescribed to you for a person who never requested it. You did not have legal power of attorney at the time. One more stunt, and this goes directly to law enforcement. This is not a warning. E.M. Jordan folded the page too fast, as if speed could unwrite it. Her palms were sweating. From the other room, the sound of a drawer slamming echoed too loud. Cam stood at the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. No suitcase, just the kind of exit that happens after too many days in someone else's shadow. He didn't speak. Where are you going? Jordan asked, voice cracking. Out, he muttered. Far. I don't need to be here when this catches up to you. You were part of it. No, I was smart enough to know when to stop. He looked at the envelope in her hand. She's giving you one last chance. You should take it. He left without another word. The front door didn't slam, just clicked. Jordan stood in the quiet for a long time, the letter limp in her hands. When she finally moved, it was to the trash can, but she didn't drop it in. She folded it again, smaller this time, and slid it into the drawer with her old college transcripts and a dried corsage from prom. Some truths didn't burn. They stuck on the other side of town. Evelyn opened her laptop. The new security system had finished syncing. Dual-door sensors, smart window locks, and 2 silent cameras disguised inside flower pots on the front and back porch. The installer had been young, kind, quick, and never once asked why she needed facial recognition set up for only one person. Now, any returning shadows would be logged, time-stamped and archived. She clicked through the motion alerts: a squirrel, the mailman, a breeze, nothing more. The house was quieter than it had been in months. Not just silent, stable, like it had finally exhaled. Maureen texted from the co-op. "Pie or wine tonight?" Evelyn replied, "Both. One for celebration, one for memory." She paused, then sent a second message. "He's gone. She's still watching." Maureen sent back a single word: "Careful." Evelyn smiled. She closed the laptop, walked to the drawer, and checked the envelope copy she'd kept. Her own record, time-stamped and signed. Not sent in fear, just filed in case. The letter wasn't vengeance, it was insurance. And the bottle? Still sealed, still waiting. The wind had shifted. Not a storm, not yet, but the kind of weather that made windows groan and chimney flues whisper secrets from long-dead winters. Evelyn stood in the den, brushing lint from a flannel sleeve when she heard Maureen's voice from upstairs. "Evelyn, you might want to see this." There was no panic in her tone, just something slower, thicker. Evelyn took the stairs one at a time, each step deliberate. She found Maureen in the guest room, kneeling beside an old cedar chest, the kind Evelyn hadn't opened in years. Maureen held something in both hands, a narrow orange pharmacy bottle, capped but dusty. She didn't speak at first, just passed it over like it was heavier than it looked. Evelyn turned it in her fingers. The label was faded but intact. Her own name printed in font from a system the pharmacy hadn't used in over a decade. But there was no medication inside. She unscrewed the lid. What slid into her palm wasn't pills. It was a roll of fine parchment paper, cream-colored, hand-signed in blue ink. The header made her go still. "Last Will and Testament of Evelyn A. Marks, dated July 4, 2017. Her breath caught. Maureen leaned in, reading upside down. "That's before any of it," Evelyn said softly. She unrolled the pages with care, her eyes scanning the names, the inheritance breakdown, the house, the accounts, the cabin in Coeur d'Alene she'd long since sold, and at the center of it all, primary beneficiary, Jordan L. Marks. Evelyn's signature at the bottom looked confident, trusting. The kind of pen stroke made by someone who hadn't yet learned to be suspicious of family. Maureen sat back on her heels. "This is the original?" "The very first," Evelyn murmured. "Before the edits, before the surveillance, before the pills." She didn't hesitate. She folded the will sharply, once, twice, and then again until the paper creaked. She walked downstairs, lit the stove with a flick of the ignition, and held the folded will just above the burner. It caught on the first try. Flames curled upward in a clean blue whisper. Maureen stood beside her, watching. "She had her shot," Evelyn said, dropping the last blackened scrap into the sink. The moment didn't need applause, just closure. That night, Evelyn opened her ledger again. The final draft of her estate lay in front of her, already reviewed by Mr. Levin, notarized, sealed. But now she made one last addition: Legacy Allocation Addendum, the Evelyn Marks Clinical Training Fund for Senior Pharmaceutical Ethics, a $210,000 endowment for post-grad pharmacists specializing in elder care integrity, scholarships for 3 candidates per year, with stipulations: fieldwork in legal aid clinics, background checks, and annual accountability reviews. "Not just to remember," Evelyn whispered, "but to protect." She initialed the page, then slipped it into a fresh envelope, pressing it flat. Then she retrieved the now empty orange bottle, the one Maureen had found, and cleaned it with alcohol wipes, removing the old label. She placed the bottle back inside the velvet memory box, now dry and hollow. Not bait, not threat, just memory. And this time sealed not with a warning, but with a truth only survivors earned. Downstairs, the motion sensor blinked once. No alert, just whine through the dogwoods. Jordan hadn't returned, but Evelyn knew how shadows moved. She didn't fear them anymore. Major twist, Snum 3 unlocked. The original inheritance is gone. The legacy rewritten. Jordan was erased, not by anger, but by a woman who finally stopped waiting for apologies. The auditorium at Pacific Sound University wasn't grand. No velvet curtains, no polished mahogany, just pale wood walls, folding chairs and the faint hum of fluorescent lights, but to Evelyn, it felt like a cathedral. The plaque outside read, "The Evelyn Marks Lecture Hall, dedicated to ethical legacy in pharmaceutical care." Inside, she stood behind a simple podium, one hand resting lightly on the rim, like she might lean in or let go at any moment. Before her, rows of students, white coats mixed with windbreakers, notebooks open, pens twitching with nervous anticipation. At the front row sat Maureen, legs crossed neatly, a pinched smile that tried to look casual but couldn't quite hide the pride radiating from her shoulders. She gave Evelyn a small nod. Evelyn returned it, then turned to the crowd. "Thank you for being here," she said, voice not loud but clear. "I'm not a speaker by trade. I worked behind a pharmacy counter for 36 years. I measured things, I didn't raise them." The students leaned in. "This award," she continued, holding up the certificate edged in silver foil, "is not a gift, it's not a charity. It's a promise that someone else will never go unheard the way too many of us have." She paused. "Sometimes, survival is silent. It happens in the things you choose not to swallow, the documents you hide in plain sight, the conversations you record when everyone assumes you're too old to bother." A ripple of stillness moved through the room. No phones, no scribbles, just listening. Evelyn turned slightly, gesturing to the woman standing at stage left. Young, broad-shouldered, a lab coat pressed with care, and eyes that had seen loss too soon. "Jasmine Callahan," Evelyn said, "first recipient of the Marks Grant for Senior Pharmaceutical Oversight." Jasmine stepped forward, nerves visible in her hands but steel in her spine. She took the certificate with both palms, then leaned in. "My grandmother died from a med error in a nursing facility," she whispered. "She didn't get to fight, but you did. Thank you." Evelyn's lips pressed together. She gave the young woman a single nod. No speeches, just that. They stood for a photo together, Evelyn with her hands neatly folded, Jasmine clutching the certificate like armor. The flash flickered once, then again. Later, Evelyn walked the length of the campus quad with Maureen beside her, a cloth bag in her hand, heavy with age. They arrived at the university's archival office, an old brick building smelling of paper and calibration ink. Evelyn removed the bag's contents and laid them on the intake table: 4 leather-bound pharmacy journals, handwritten logs, dosage algorithms, notes about side effects she'd witnessed, patterns she'd flagged, patients she still remembered by the way they coughed or complained. "These should go where people read things slowly," Evelyn said, carefully. The librarian nodded, slipping on cotton gloves. "We'll digitize and preserve everything." Outside, Evelyn stood at the edge of the steps, the late-day sun spreading long golden lines across the walkway. Students passed, laughing unaware. The world kept moving. Maureen lifted her phone. "Do you want to share any of these? You look like a force." Evelyn glanced at the screen, her eyes narrowed. "No," she said. "I don't need to be seen to be heard." She turned, coat flaring slightly in the breeze, and headed down the stairs. At home that evening, she tucked the remaining copy of the grant paperwork into the memory box, right beside the now labelless bottle, still empty, still sealed. She didn't check the cameras, didn't scan for shadows. Some victories don't come with applause, they come with silence that no longer feels heavy. The bottle no longer warned, it witnessed. And Evelyn, she had nothing left to prove. The envelope was small, no postage, no sender. Just Jordan's name typed cleanly across the center in a serif font, Evelyn never used for anything but records. It arrived on a Thursday morning, slid under her apartment door in Tacoma's new downtown, the carpet still smelling like industrial glue and optimism. She stared at it for a while, then opened it. Inside was one thing, a pharmacy label. Old, cleanly peeled, flattened between 2 sheets of acetate. In bold type, zolpidem tartrate, 40 milligrams, for external use only. Not everything is yours to swallow. Jordan's breath hitched. There was no accompanying note, no signature, but she didn't need one. She sat down on the floor, the envelope limp in her hand. The laminate glared faintly in the sunbeam slicing through the blinds. She touched the label through the plastic like it might offer warmth or absolution. It didn't. Across town, Evelyn stood at her window, watering the small tray of rosemary and thyme she kept on the sill. No binoculars, no watching for cars, just habit now, routine. Down the block, a moving truck turned a corner. The logo half scraped, boxes stacked in its open bed like someone couldn't decide what to keep. Maureen stepped up behind her, a quiet presence in wool socks and coffee breath. "Gone?" she asked. Evelyn didn't look away. Yes. No gloating, no smirk, just closure. Cam hadn't come back. Not for the mail, not for his mother's necklace he'd left in the guest drawer, not even for the Redfin listing Jordan never officially closed. Jordan herself was relocating to Portland. New job according to a neighbor who loved gossip and disliked nuance. Somewhere in logistics, somewhere no one cared who she used to be. Evelyn watched the truck pull away. Then she walked to the hallway cabinet and pulled the key from around her neck. Inside, a single glass display box, newly placed on the middle shelf. She opened it. The bottle sat upright, polished, empty but clear, the label now permanently affixed behind the glass. Marks, take one. When greedy. Below it, a new inscription engraved into the base, lesson delivered. Evelyn ran one finger along the edge, then locked the case. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt finished. That night, she changed into her softest robe, tucked a book under her pillow, and turned off the bedroom light with a sigh not of exhaustion, but of clean quiet. She slept deeply, dreamlessly. The house didn't creak, the wind didn't interrupt, nothing pressed from the outside. In the morning she'd walk to the co-op, maybe pick out strawberries, maybe not. The days were hers again. And the bottle? Still there. Not hidden, not forgotten. Just placed where memory could be trusted, but no longer feared. Final line, she brought me poison. I sent her the truth, in measured doses.